Hello friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story where our OP turns the tables on a coworker who's been making her life difficult. Coworker who repeatedly insulted my boyfriend. My one coworker, Nick, is a complete jerk. He's been working at my workplace since October, and as the only woman there, he was one of only a couple of guys to be weird with me. Repeatedly asking about my relationship, I told him I have a relationship with my boyfriend James, who does the same career we do. He would ask me a lot of weird questions over the months about what race James was, what does he look like, asking to see pictures. I refused. I told him James is very successful, professionally respected, and I love him. Still, the curiosity was there every shift together. We had a work Christmas party in late December. James was there as my date. He's a 5'3.5", 26-meter guy. I'm 5'11", my other coworkers were totally normal, and it was a good time. Nick looked surprised and just had a cordial hello and how did you meet? We met at our last job. That was that. Over the next few weeks, Nick, who's a 6'5" guy, made several comments about how can he handle you? You didn't want a real man? You seem really dominant. So you like white boys? Well, we know you like little men. That pissed me off. This stuck with me as I have an extreme distaste for anyone who insults my man, especially being friendly to his face and then saying this crap on the back end to his lady. 2 supervisors quit between the end of December and January, and we were called into my head boss's office to give our opinions on the appointments. One of these supervisory roles was focused on heavy paperwork and was the overnight role. Nick was openly talking about how he wanted the other position, which involved more freedom and daytime hours. I knew he'd get it based on work experience and age, 8 years in the career, 32-year-old male. I only have 3 years as a 25-year-old female, wasn't going to apply. My boss asked me what I thought, and I cited multiple examples of Nick covering people's rear ends with paperwork and weaponized his competence. I also really embellished how my other coworker, who was the other consideration, didn't do well at night. It seemed like he may fall asleep easily. I brought up examples of mistakes made by my other coworker and made Nick sound like the only one capable of handling dozens of detailed reports and documents. My boss highly values my opinions, and I've been personally consulted about many regular decisions. At the end of our conversation, my boss told me he made his decision. Nick was assigned to the overnight supervisory role a couple days later. The pay is barely an increase given he's forbidden from OT, and the workload is way more than the base responsibilities. It's been a month of this role. He's since had many verbal arguments with his wife on the phone and is miserable. No idea I said anything. He seems too focused on the increased work and personal life stress to say anything about James. Edit. I'm a firefighter. We don't have an HR department. It's through the city. This isn't a company. I phrased it obscurely, purposefully, but I'm not ashamed of my occupation, so cat's out of the bag. Also, at a previous department, things got so bad with sexual harassment with a select few men that I ate in the women's bathroom before applying where I'm at now. When I tried to report the past situation through the chain of command at a larger department, it got out from supervisors that I was a snitch and my life was hell to the point of clinical depression. I already am involved in a lawsuit with my previous employer. James was one of a handful of guys who was still kind to me and didn't join in the workplace bullying. He wound up quitting that department on his own volition shortly after I left. Not scared of saying things generally, but I know how this career is and have learned a lot from that experience. It's very embarrassing to tell your boss and show him text that your coworker openly asks for nudes and if he can do certain things to you and hear, "Why can't you move on? This is not a serious matter," from a superior. Also, the thing with Nick is a lot worse than what I initially typed, trying to keep it safe for work. He's openly asked if James has a small package to me, which was really upsetting. Did you have sex with him? When I told Chief I picked James up from the airport a day prior when he came back from special training. Some of these interactions were in front of one of the supervisors who quit, who has my back, and asked what I wanted to do. I pulled strings based on seniority before the promotion and basically made Nick work Christmas Day, when really I'm not big on Christmas or holidays, and it meant way more to him than me. Didn't know I was involved in that either. In the meantime, I only have to see Nick now once a month during mandatory team meetings for an hour, which is better for overall well-being. I'm asking my union rep what my next steps would be this week if this continues. Fantastic. I just cannot understand how some men obsess over these things. He's a married man with an unhealthy obsession with who a coworker dates. Your guy's height or race or anything else has absolutely no bearing on your coworker's life at all. It's so weird and gross. And our second story. Got written up for preferring the PlayStation over Nintendo. Back in 2007, I, a 23-year-old male at the time, worked for a large video game chain. Now, this was shortly after the Nintendo Wii came out, and we were always sold out. Every morning, we'd have a line of customers that would wait around for our daily deliveries to see if we had any new Wiis coming in. So one evening, I was working a fairly slow shift, and these two kids came in and started chatting with my coworker and I. Both of them were probably around 14 years old and came around frequently. One of the kids started talking about how great and wonderful the Nintendo Wii was. He started asking for my opinion, and I simply told him that it was a good console, but that I was not a fan of the idea of motion controls and didn't want to get one. I went on to say that I was more a fan of the PlayStation. He started to lose his mind over this. Well, I should say that he pretended to lose his mind over this. You could tell that he wasn't really upset that I didn't like the Wii and that he just wanted to mess with me. He started to demand that I say that the Wii was the greatest and that there was no other better console. To be honest, it was getting to be a bit much. I just stood my ground and continued to say that the Wii was not something that I liked. The kid started getting really frustrated because I wouldn't say what he wanted me to say. At this point, I think he was starting to get upset for real instead of just messing with me. He then pulled out the manager card. He told me that he knew the district manager and that if I didn't say that the Wii was the best console out there, that he would report me. Now, anyone that works in retail has probably heard that line before, so I brushed it off and kept my position. The kid and his friend eventually stopped off, and I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. This kid actually knew the district manager. He ended up going to the district manager and came up with some lie about how I was extremely rude and an overall jerk to him. The district manager immediately wrote me up. She didn't talk to my store manager or my coworker who was there that night before putting in the paperwork. After writing me up, the district manager called my store manager to go over the write-up. My store manager was shocked. She immediately defended me, saying there was no way that I would treat a customer that way. The district manager at this point realizes that she may have been a little rash in her decision to write me up and asked the store manager to investigate the event. My coworker and I arrived that afternoon and sat down with the store manager. She tells me that I've been written up because I was rude to some kid. I tell her my side of the story, and my coworker tells her what he saw as well. My store manager went back to the district manager, told my side of the story, as well as my coworker's version. The district manager ended up going back to the kid and figured out that he had lied to her. The next time that I had to work, I got a face-to-face visit from the district manager. She starts apologizing to me about writing me up without even looking into the event in question. But she told me that she cannot undo the write-up, that once the paperwork goes through, that it cannot be undone. I always wonder if she could have reversed the write-up, but said that she couldn't in order to save her own skin. As for the kid, he was forced to give me an apology. The store manager gave me the option on whether he would be banned from the store. I was even given the option to permanently ban him, but I didn't want him bitter over a stupid mistake. I ended up making the ban for something like 3 months. I never did see that kid after he got banned, even after the ban had been lifted. I kind of wondered if he was too embarrassed to show up while I worked. Nowadays, I actually prefer Nintendo over PlayStation, but I'm still not that big a fan of the Wii. I demand district manager add a signed and dated note to the write-up saying that the entire write-up was invalid if she couldn't outright remove it. And our next story. We're building a fence in the yard of our new house. The neighbor claims that the property belongs to him. When we moved into our new home in Pennsylvania, we knew we were stepping into a long history between neighbors. The house sits on what used to be 2 lots, and when the previous owners combined them, they discovered that the neighbors next door had been maintaining about 10 feet of their property. Over the years, these neighbors had laid down mulch, installed an electrical box for their lights, and even planted an arbor that crossed from one lot to the other. Since the previous owners were good friends with the neighbors, they never made an issue of it, especially since most of the land was just brush and woods. Fast forward to today, and we're ready to make the house our own. With small children and pets, we decided to put up a 6-foot cedar privacy fence, which is perfectly allowed by our township. As a courtesy, I approached all our neighbors to let them know about the fence before we put it up. Most were fine with it, but the neighbor who was encroaching on our property was immediately hostile. He told me he hates our fence, that I'm ruining the property, and that I should put up a 4-foot picket fence instead. I calmly explained that we weren't trying to start a fight and that we had no intention of putting up a fence on the area he's been maintaining in his garden, even though we could. But he kept pushing, telling me not to put the fence too far down by him. He also mentioned that he had thought about buying the land from us, but decided against it because it was too expensive. So instead of paying for it, he's just going to keep using it as his own and give us grief for wanting to put up a fence on our own property. We initially considered offering a rental agreement as a compromise, but after the neighbor's hostility, we decided enough was enough. If he wasn't going to respect our property, we'd have to make it clear where the boundaries were. We went ahead and put up the 6-foot fence right along the property line, taking back the full 10 feet he'd been using without our permission. The fence gave us the privacy we wanted. The neighbor wasn't happy, of course, but we finally had our space back. And with our boundaries firmly established, we can now enjoy our home. And our last story. Me and my babies need to use your pool. Okay, backstory. This happened in 1965. Just for some clarification, I was 26 then, 81 now. I had a pool party yesterday and thought about this run-in that I had. So in my old neighborhood, my wife and I rented a home in a community of around 23 houses. Out of these 23 homes, we were one of about 7 with a pool because the previous owner ordered a pool when he had the house built. Adding a pool was around a $2,000 option, so many people didn't get it. Because I had a pool, a lot of people would try to come over to swim. Now, I was quite generous with my pool if people called first. Now, understandably, some weekends I wanted some peace and quiet. A new family had moved in to the left of me, and they heard that I was generous with my pool, so the mom and her 3 kids just came over in swimsuits and asked to use my pool. I said that I was tired, and next weekend they could swim, just not right now. I told her that she and her kid could go to the community center. She and her kids could have gotten in for around 25 cents around that time. She said, entitled mom, "Oh, come on, I don't want to drive all that way." 3 miles. Plus, I don't want my babies in that water with all those dirty people. Me. I'm sorry, I just got off a 60-hour week. I don't want to have people over. Sorry. Due to her angry attitude, I didn't want her in my home, so I was very dismissive of her using my pool. Come on, my babies are hot and need to cool off. Just let us swim for an hour and we'll leave. I don't want them in that nasty pool. Just be a good neighbor. No, I'm sorry. She then whispers something to her kids and they proceed to beg to use my pool. I just close the door on her. A few hours later, I hear my dog barking and people screaming. I look out the window and the mom and her kids had hopped my fence to gain access to my pool, and they were being cornered by my dog, Cupcake. Cupcake was a big pit bull and she was a sweetie but always defended me and my property. I take the family out of my yard and tell them if they came on my property again, I would call the police. She also tried to gain access to the other neighbors' pools and was promptly banned from there as well. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.